What if I told you that no one has ever fallen in love with you, not for who you really are, not for your essence, but for an illusion, a reflection, a shadow that even you didn't know you were casting? What if the love you thought was true was actually just the way the other person's soul found to get closer to what they lost inside themselves? Carl Jung believed that love is not a choice. It is a mirror. It is the meeting of two unconscious minds that have not yet been seen in the light of consciousness. And when two unconscious minds meet, it is not the truth that happens. It is theater, a profound performance where the other falls in love not with you, but with what you activate, what you represent, what you remind them of, even without knowing it. Have you ever experienced a love that seemed magical? An encounter that left you breathless, as if you had been recognized by someone who had been waiting for you for lifetimes? Have you ever felt the intensity of a connection that seemed inexplicable, as if something ancient was being rekindled therein? That look, in that touch, in that moment, Jung would call this projection. A phenomenon so powerful that it can heal or destroy. Because when someone falls in love with what you symbolize and not who you are, love becomes a trap. And when the illusion crumbles, what is left? Maybe you were never truly loved. Maybe you never truly loved, because no one loves what they haven't had the courage to see completely. And you? Have you ever had the courage to see yourself? Or are you also just loving the image that the other person reflects back to you? What awakens love in others when they find you? What is it about you that attracts? Not hearts, but wounds. Not people, but hidden desires. What if all of this has nothing to do with what you show, but with what you hide? Carl Jung said that we fall in love not with the other person, but with what they awaken in us. And when someone approaches you with eyes ablaze and a racing heart that's not love, it's recognition, a profound reunion with a forgotten part of your own soul, an image, a symbol, a lost piece of what was or what you never had the courage to be. You are not the destination. You are the mirror. According to Jung, love is an operation of the psyche. Not a rational choice, not cosmic chance, but the movement of the unconscious in search of itself. And that's why someone falls in love with you. For two reasons, only two. Both born in the underground of being. Neither has anything to do with your smile, your voice, or your company. It has to do with what you represent, with what you activate, with what you remind the other person of, even without meaning to. The first reason is simple and devastating. You represent something that is missing. Not something trivial, but something essential. A forgotten courage, a repressed freedom, a gentleness that the other person has never known. You embody what their soul has suffocated in order to survive. And then in front of you, all of this awakens. The admiration, the enchantment, the desire. They are not for you, but for what you carry. You become a symbol, a whisper of what could have been, a living possibility. And the cruelest part is that you don't know it. You didn't choose this role, you just exist. But by existing authentically, you activate something that others have been avoiding feeling for a long time. They cling to your presence as if it were the answer, as if you were the bridge, the relief, the rescue. But what they really want is to find themselves again. And that's why you become indispensable, essential, irresistible, not for who you are, but for what you represent within them. But there's a problem. Jung knew that. Projection idealizes, and the ideal never stands up to reality. When time passes, when your flaws appear, when you start to breathe outside the role you've been assigned, something breaks. The spell is broken. The sparkle disappears. Because the other person wasn't seeing you. They were seeing an internal image, a fragment of their own soul incarnated in you. You become a screen, and everything the other person hasn't resolved begins to be projected onto you. Love becomes a demand, Affection becomes an expectation. Admiration turns into anger, because without realizing it, you failed. You showed that you were human, that you weren't the myth they created, that you weren't the cure, the harbor, the idol. And then the love that was so intense turns into distance, silence, frustration. You ask yourself, what did I do wrong? And the answer is painful. You were just too real. But projection is not just a trap. Jung saw it as a path to growth, because it reveals what is still hidden. When someone falls in love with you for what they lack, there is an opportunity there, a glimmer of light, an invitation to integration. The other person can, if they have the courage, recognize that what they love in you is what they themselves need to awaken, that your courage is also theirs, that your intensity can live within them, that your freedom does not need to be copied, it can be cultivated. And when that happens, love transforms. From dependence, it becomes mature admiration. From fascination, it becomes presence. From projection, it becomes communion. But this requires a level of awareness that not everyone is ready to live, because it is easier to love the symbol than to face the pain of being incomplete. Most people fall in love for this first reason, lack. But they don't know it. And because they don't know it, they love halfway. They love without seeing. They love hoping that you will continue to represent what they don't have the courage to be. Jung said that the other is always a clue, a map, a sign. When someone falls in love with you, it is because there is something latent in their unconscious, and you have become the vehicle for that to emerge. Love, then, is only the symptom. The real movement is internal. It is the self calling. It is the soul screaming. It is the unconscious trying to evolve. But there is a second reason, much deeper and much more dangerous. It is when you not only represent what the other has lost, but when you embody what they have idealized all their life. When you activate the archetype. When, without knowing it, you become the sacred image they carry within themselves. Carl Jung said that within every human being there is an image of the sacred, not a religious figure, but an emotional symbol, an archetypal form, silent and ancient, shaped from our earliest contacts with the feminine and masculine, with our mother, our father, with absence, with trauma, with dreams. Jung called these images anima and animus, and they shape the way we love, not the other person, but the image we project onto them, the idea of love that was planted in our unconscious long before we met anyone. That's why love sometimes feels like destiny. It feels like a reunion. It feels like something from another life, because in fact it is. But not in mystical terms. It is the soul recognizing the symbol it has carried silently for decades. It is the psyche saying, it's him, it's her, it's what I drew inside and finally found outside. But Jung warned, this is dangerous, because no one is capable of sustaining an archetypal image for long without falling apart. When someone falls in love with you for this second reason, it's not just because they're needy or lacking something. It's because you unknowingly embody the mythical figure that the other person has nurtured for years. You become an emotional deity, a temple, an altar. And because of that, everything is too intense, too fast, too deep. It feels like you've known each other for centuries. It seems like you were made for each other. The connection transcends logic. The looks say it all. The bodies seek each other as if time were of the essence, and the soul surrenders. But this kind of love, Jung said, is not about you. It's about the image, the emotional structure that has been projected onto you. The person is not seeing who you are. They are seeing who they have always hoped someone would be. And as long as you can sustain that image, everything will be perfect. But the day your humanity shows itself, the day you contradict yourself, make a mistake, fail, doubt, something breaks. Because you can't be an archetype. You're human. And humans disappoint fantasy. The love that was born from a symbol begins to wither in the face of reality. The other person feels betrayed but doesn't know why. They start saying that you've changed, that you've lost your sparkle, that you're not the same anymore. But the truth is that you've just stopped acting. You've started being yourself. Jung knew that this breakup was inevitable and necessary, because only when the idealized image falls can real love be born. Only after disillusionment can the soul love what is not what it dreamed of. But few can bear this grief. They prefer the ecstasy of projection to the truth of the relationship. That is why many archetypal loves end in ruin. Not because they were lies, but because they were too true to last. The pain is immense, because what collapses is not just the relationship, it is faith itself. The other person feels they have lost something sacred. You feel you have never been truly seen. And both of you are left hurt, confused, broken. But Jung saw beauty even in this, because all pain of this kind is a chance for individuation, for integration, for growth. When someone falls in love with you because you activated their inner image, you become an instrument of awakening. You are the mirror in which they saw for a few moments the forgotten face of their own spirit. And even if they hate you afterwards, even if they run away, even if they erase you, you were the bridge, the ritual, the necessary break. And the same happens to you. You too have loved someone who seemed to be everything, who seemed to have come out of your deepest dreams. You believed you had found home, but in fact, you found the symbol. And when the symbol fell apart, everything fell apart. And you felt you no longer knew how to love. But now maybe you understand. Now maybe you realize that it was never about the other person. It was always about what they awakened in you. If this reflection resonates with you, tell me in the comments, have you ever loved someone for who they really were, or for what they represented in your soul share? Sometimes, a comment is the mirror that someone else needs to wake up. Carl Jung believed that the love that destroys is often the same love that heals, because it reveals what was hidden. It reveals the wounded child who was waiting for a savior. It reveals the needy adult who built an emotional religion around someone else's image. It reveals that we didn't love the other person, but what they made us feel, the archetype they carried, the hope they symbolized. And when that fantasy collapses, we feel betrayed. But the only betrayal was the one we committed against ourselves, by refusing to see the truth. When someone falls in love with you because of the images you awaken in them, you become an altar. And being an altar is exhausting, because it demands holiness, purity, constancy, and no human being can sustain that without breaking. But Jung taught that the collapse of projection is the seed of true love. What begins with idealization must die for intimacy to be born. What begins as adoration must rot away for truth to blossom. You can see this in your own relationships. Those who loved you the most were perhaps those who knew you the least, and those who knew you the most were perhaps those who idealized you the least. Real love is born after the fall, after disappointment, after the other has seen everything. In you, the beauty, the light, the fear, the contradiction, and yet it remains. Even so, they look you in the eyes and say, I recognize you, not as a projection, but as a presence. But most don't get there, because when love is born of fantasy, reality becomes unbearable. Jung called this the archetypal collapse, an inner rupture that hurts more than the end of the relationship, because it is the end of an internal structure. And those who do not understand this, who are not aware of this, lose themselves. They think the other person was cruel. They think they were deceived. They think they lost something that was supposed to be eternal. But what they lost was their own reflection. You were once the symbol. You were once the mirror. You were once loved for what you awakened in the other person. But were you seen? Were you ever truly loved for who you are when all the images fade away? What's more, have you ever looked at someone and loved their reality, not the fantasy that your unconscious projected onto them? This is the question, Carl. Jung asked all those who dared to love, what is it in me that asks for this love? What am I looking for in the other that I have not yet found in myself? Because true love does not begin with an encounter. It begins in the mirror. And the mirror we avoid the most is the one that shows us what we lack. Many believe that love is about fusion. Two bodies, two souls, one destiny. But Jung saw love as tension. Tension between light and shadow, between the inner masculine and feminine, between desire and fear, between the archetype and the individual. And this tension is not a mistake. It is a calling. Love is not the end of the road. It is the beginning of the journey of individuation. You will only recognize the other when you have already recognized yourself. You will only see the other as they are when you have the courage to see yourself as you are, without layers, without scripts, without projections. And maybe only then can someone truly love you, not as a symbol, but as a soul. The problem is that most people fall in love to escape themselves. They use others as a refuge, as a distraction, as a solution. And sooner or later, this kind of love implodes. Because no one was made to carry someone else's psyche. Because no relationship can survive the weight of unresolved emptiness. So when love ends, when the other person leaves, when you feel like you've lost everything, maybe you're facing the chance to find yourself for the first time. Jung said that what hurts us deeply also gives us direction. And the scars of love are not a sign of failure. They are a sign that you have begun to see. The question then is not, why did he fall in love with me, or why did he leave me? The real question is, what in me attracted that soul, and what do I still need to integrate so that I stop looking in others for what should already be within me? The answer to that question is the door to healing. It is the end of the cycle of repetition. It is the liberation from projection, and perhaps the beginning of true love. The kind that does not need to save, heal, or complete. Just be, because it is whole. Carl Jung said that what attracts us to another is actually the silent call of our own soul asking to be seen. And perhaps that is the cruelest and most liberating meaning of love. You don't fall in love with people. You fall in love with forgotten parts of yourself. With images that the unconscious has silently shaped. With fantasies that beg to be healed. And the other just embodies that symbol for a while, until you are ready to see beyond the projection. And if you're listening to this now, maybe you're at that point. The point where everything seems to be falling apart, but where secretly something is beginning to be born. The point where the pain of having been idealized, or of having idealized too much, begins to give way to lucidity. Where love ceases to be an escape and becomes a mirror, where the other ceases to be the solution and becomes the path. You have been loved as a symbol. You have loved as an escape. You have lost yourself trying to represent what others expected of you. But now maybe it's time to come back. Come back to yourself. Come back to the center. Come back to what has always been there, waiting for recognition. If this video resonated in some forgotten part of you, allow it to follow its path. Share it with those you still love without awareness. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. But above all, look inside. Because only when you stop seeking love as a substitute will it emerge as truth.